last civil war was over human beings. If there's another one, it might be over the garbage human beings create. CNN's Jeff Opgang explains.
There's a rising mountain of trouble in this age of the disposable. We're running out of space to put our trash.
The problem is getting very, very serious. You know, about a third of our landfills will be full in the next 5 or 6 years. I don't know if the word crisis is too strong, but it's not all that too strong.
Around 5 pounds more trash piles up daily for every man, woman, and child in this country. As urban landfills, especially in the Northeast, fill up, waste haulers are looking more to the open spaces of the South. It has the makings of a new kind of war between the states.
We welcome industry and business coming into the state, but we're not too receptive to this type of industry and business.
This traffic in trash is good business. In the North, it may cost $150 a ton to unload garbage at a landfill. Here in the South, it may cost just a few dollars per ton, sometimes nothing. The hauler can pocket a huge profit. Alabama fears most of its dumps will be full in 15 years, and 8 container loads of trash were not welcome when they arrived from New Jersey by rail.
It is a disgrace to Alabama for people out of state to bring stuff in here and pollute our air and our water and all of our environment.
Nobody wants garbage next door, not his own, not anybody else's. Remember the long journey of New York's garbage barge. But when Alabama officials held up the New Jersey shipment, the landfill owner sued Alabama in federal court and won. The judge ruled the Constitution bars states from interfering in interstate commerce, even the commerce in trash. But the judge sympathized with state officials, saying this case and similar ones cry out for congressional action. But federal officials say there's little they can do. They say the best hope is reducing landfill use through recycling.
Right now the mix is about 85 or 90% landfilling, about 5 to 10% each of incineration and recycling. We would like that mix to go to the 25% or so recycling at least, maybe higher later.
For now, concern mounts, and so does the garbage. Jeff Opgang, CNN, Atlanta.
Thank you, Spencer. It's 9 minutes after the hour. For more than 6 weeks now, America has been following the voyage of a barge carrying 3,000 tons of garbage as it searches for a port, any port, that will let it unload its cargo. From Islip, Long Island, it sailed first to Morehead City, North Carolina, where the crew was told to keep moving. From Morehead City, it was on to New Orleans. From New Orleans to Mexico. From Mexico to Belize. From Belize back to the waters off Key West, Florida. Yesterday, an offer was made by the developer of a tiny island in the Bahamas. Maybe he'll take it. We'll see if the Bahamas will go along with it. I rather like Johnny Carson's suggestion that we send it to Iran. But it all underlines some serious problems, because last year America produced more than 150 million tons of garbage. That's enough to fill 50,000 of these barges. Government officials say that this somewhat humorous story has brought attention to the serious problem. Dr. J. Winston Porter is the Assistant Administrator for Solid and Hazardous Waste at the Environmental Protection Agency. He joins us from Washington this morning. And joining us here in New York is Fred Krupp, who is the Executive Director of the Environmental Defense Fund. And good morning to both of you. There are some serious points in all this, but I am still amazed by this barge story. Dr. Porter, I'm amazed that there is garbage being taken from Islip, Long Island down to North Carolina. Is there money in that? Does it have to be done? Why is the barge doing that?
Well, we're kind of amazed, too. We don't think it has to be done at all, and we want to see people, local officials and state officials, deal with the problem much closer to home. Presumably there was money in this transaction, but we don't think it's a good way to do business.
Why hasn't anyone taken this barge?
Well, I think fundamentally the notoriety of the barge has kind of gotten ahead of things. Our indications, this is pretty much plain old garbage, and just like the millions of tons we get rid of all the time, but it's required a notoriety, and I think all the local officials are running from the problem as fast as they can.
Fred, is this a common problem, a barge with no home? I mean, does this happen very often?
Well, it is. And in fact, it's a very sad commentary that here we are sending a barge adrift to nowhere with nowhere to go. And I think it symptomizes a real failure of leadership on the part of EPA to come up with a coherent national vision as to what we should do with our garbage. I mean, if this is not EPA's responsibility, what is?
Well, why is it? Dr. Porter, do you feel that the federal government has any role in this kind of thing?
Certainly we have a role. We have a role to provide technical assistance and to set standards and do a number of things. But there's 10,000 municipal landfills in this country, and there's lots and lots of jurisdictions that have to deal with this. And we think it's very important for local and state officials to address these issues. There's local planning ordinances, there's local zoning ordinances, there's local groundwater situations, all kinds of factors that EPA cannot micromanage for 10,000 landfills. And we really believe that while we'll do our part, the state and local officials have got to step up to this problem. We'll provide technical assistance, we'll provide standards and guidance setting, but we cannot micromanage 10,000 landfills.
Yeah, Fred, I must say, if there's anything that the layman looks at and says, this is a local problem, this is something that the states, the localities take care of, it's their own lousy garbage.
Well, it has been viewed as a local problem, but that view just hasn't worked. Each locality all around the country is now facing a crisis. There's no place to throw the garbage away. There is no away.
Why not landfills? I mean, you got a landfill, put it in there.
Well,
why isn't this stuff in the Islip Long Island landfill?
What people are trying to continue to do, is to bury their garbage or to burn it. But it's been required now to take the garbage further and further away, and it's very expensive. Why not do that? Well, for one, it doesn't make sense. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's very expensive to cart this stuff further and further away. Two, it's silly from an environmental perspective to waste the materials. And finally, from the standpoint of fouling the groundwater and polluting the air, it doesn't make sense from the perspective of all of us in terms of the threat to our health.
So when you say wasting the materials, I gather where you're pointing me is that you believe there ought to be recycling plants being built. By localities or by the federal government?
Well, absolutely. In 1976, Congress decided that EPA should come out with procurement guidelines forcing the government, which is such a big user of paper, to buy recycled paper and whatnot. Until this day, some now 11 years later, EPA has yet to issue final guidelines mandating the purchase of recycled paper. If we could create some markets for these materials, recycling them makes a lot of sense. It's cheaper and it's a lot healthier.
Dr. Porter, how about that?
Well, I agree. I think recycling is very important. We are, about 40% of the material in garbage is in fact paper products. And we are issuing those guidelines he referred to this summer, as a matter of fact. And we think recycling is a big part of the answer. It needs to be pushed very hard, both in terms of metal recycling, bottle recycling, and most of all, paper recycling. But I think I need to stress that we're going to have landfilling and we're going to have incineration. Also, we simply have to have them, and they both can be made environmentally safe. I think it's very important we stress to people that you're going to have to deal with recycling, you're going to have to deal with land disposal. There's 10,000 of these units right now. There'll be others. There's about 100 incinerators and resource recovery units that recover steam and generate electricity and so forth. We need all those, and we need people at the local level and ourselves to step up to them and work on those issues.
Just a question of curiosity. We got about a minute left. Let me come back to the barge. Does this country produce more garbage per person or whatever than other countries do?
Yes, Charlie, it's double or triple that in Europe, and certainly we could maintain our high standard of living and reduce the amount of garbage we produce. There's no question about it, and there's a national role in that. National action by EPA could mandate that we just use a little less packaging, take a little more care in producing our products.
Should the EPA do that, Dr. Porter?
Well, I think that's very difficult to interact in that sort of commerce. We are going to be issuing guidelines of some nature, but a lot of this is going to happen as people run out of landfills. One of the things that's happening is the free market is driving us toward more recycling because it's frankly getting extremely expensive to deal with long-distance shipping or other ways of getting rid of garbage. So,
as this barge rather well points out.
That's right.
Fred Krupp, thank you for joining us this morning. Dr. J. Winston Porter. I thought Dr. J had retired, but we found a second Dr. J.
I think what we have to do is encourage the public to really be garbage aware. When you produce it, think about it, and maybe the next time we won't be producing as much.
Garbage. It is all around us, and we're running out of room to dump it. Consider, we throw away 16 billion disposable diapers a year. along with 1.6 billion pens, 2 billion razors and blades, and nearly 250,000 tires. We have lost 3,000 dumps in the past 5 years, and we're going to shut down another 2,000 by 1993. Good evening, I'm Bob Berkowitz, and this is FNN Focus. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is J. Winston Porter, Assistant Administrator for Waste Programs for the Environmental Protection Agency. And in Los Angeles, Gordon Marker, Executive Vice President, Oxford Energy System. They're a company that generates electricity by burning discarded auto tires. Let me start in Washington, if I can, with Mr. Porter. Mr. Porter, we mentioned earlier in this broadcast that we're down to 6,000 garbage site dumps across America. By 1993, we're going to lose another 2,000. Is the picture as bleak as it sounds?
It's pretty difficult. We are going to lose a lot of landfills the next few years as things fill up. We're having a very difficult time siting or locating new facilities, and people inexorably just keep producing more garbage. We're growing at a rate of increase of garbage about twice the population growth. So we have some ideas, but things are in fact getting pretty tough.
Here in New York State, we are one of only 10 states that has a bottle recycling law. When you buy a bottle of soda or beer or whatever in your local grocery store, you pay a nickel deposit, you get it back when you return the bottle. It is surprising to me that only 9 other states have it. It seems successful here in New York. The streets look cleaner, though Lord knows they're not very clean at all. Why haven't we spread this around the country?
Well, actually, a lot of people have programs just because you're absolutely correct that only a relatively handful of states have mandatory programs. But we have about 600 curbside recycling programs in this country. And frankly, a lot of the voluntary ones have been just about as successful as the more mandatory ones. And so while I'm not, in fact, I'm actually for statewide bottle bills in general, that's not the only way to do it. And we have all over the country springing up at a pretty rapid rate a lot of voluntary or semi-voluntary or mandatory recycling programs. And I've recently called for a national goal of 25% recycling within 4 years. And I feel like we're going to meet that. It's going to be tough.
That's a commendable goal, sir, but I have to wonder, why doesn't the federal government put some more heat on the states to have these recycling programs? After all, you've done a pretty good job with the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Well, there's some that believe we should and some that believe we shouldn't. I'm not sure that there's a way we can coerce states into doing it. Frankly, the 10 states you mentioned come at it fairly different ways. And I would like to see the states move up on this problem, but I'm not sure there's any sort of top-down solution. And as I said, the voluntary programs are working, frankly, just about as well as the mandatory programs.
All right, one outfit that has reportedly been fairly successful at recycling is a company in Los Angeles, and Gordon Marker is the Executive Vice President of Oxford Energy. Am I correct, sir? I was told that you burn tires to create energy. Tell me about that.
Well, we burn a number of things to create energy. We're in the business of looking at various pieces of the waste stream and seeing what we can do that's creative about it to...
We can see some pictures up on our screen of your burning tires, sir.
Your burn.
Okay. There you go.
All right, that's inside our plant in Modesto, California. We burn approximately 4.5 million tires a year. We turn it cleanly into energy that goes onto the grid. We create steam. The steam goes into a turbine generator. The generator produces electricity that goes onto the grid, and it services the needs of about 15 or 17,000 households.
Well, you said cleanly, sir, and I think any of us who have ever seen tires burning know what the smell is like, which is awful, burning rubber. And we've also seen a lot of black smoke. How can you be so sure that this is clean air?
Well, it's tested. We have an air quality permit issued by the state of California that says, in effect, that if it has too much bad emissions, if it has black smoke, if it does not meet standards, the plant gets closed down. In point of fact, we have a technology that's been in operation in Germany since the early 70s. We have taken that technology, built a larger plant here in the United States to begin on a nationwide basis to deal with a very difficult disposal problem, whole tires.
Let me go back to Mr. Porter in Washington. This sounds awfully promising. Is it practical? I mean, we have 220 million tires that we throw away in this country every year.
Well, we certainly have to do something. You're right. We throw away about 1 tire per person per year. We have a few billion stacked up out there. So I think I can't speak precisely to the gentleman's process, but we do need to create energy from tires. I think that's one good way to do it. I'm convinced we can have good environmental controls on tire waste-to-energy plants, and I think it is practical. I think we can do it.
I think that that this administration and the administrations before that have got to answer a lot of questions. One is, why in this country do we only recycle 10% of our waste? In Western Europe, it's 30%. In Japan, it's 50%.
Well, I think for one reason, it's just plain old economics. Until very recently, it's been very cheap to build landfills in this country, $2 or $3 or $4 a ton. It's now $50 or $75 a ton in many places. In Europe, it's been expensive, and in Japan, very expensive for a long time, and virtually impossible to landfill waste. We landfill about 80% of our waste. That's changing very rapidly because of economics and because of just finding new locations. So I think what you're going to see, and we're beginning to see, is a lot more recycling just driven by market considerations and the fact that we cannot find new landfills.
All right, our telephone number, it's toll-free, and we invite you to call. It's 1-800-283-FINN, 1-800-283-FINN. Let's take our first call from Joe from Boston. Hello, Joe.
Hi, how you doing?
Great.
This is directed towards Mr. Porter. I'd like to know why the government really hasn't put any more pressure on private industry to develop more garbage burning sites, and would that be in direct reasoning or a direct result from the Reagan administration and relaxing the environmental codes on that are regulated by the EPA?
Well, we do need more burning sites for garbage. In fact, there's about 100 garbage incinerators or waste-to-energy incinerators in the country now, about 100 more planned as we speak. The problem has largely been one of public reaction, where the local public in many of these cases has not wanted an incinerator in their neighborhood. And of course, they don't want a landfill either. So we've worked on air pollution standards. We have very stringent standards. We're dealing with how to manage ash. I think we're getting those requirements in place. But the biggest problem, frankly, is trying to educate the public that you have to do something with garbage. It's not going to go to the moon. You've got to either recycle it or burn it or send to landfills or reduce it to the source.
All right, Dave from Missouri. I'm sorry, Dave from Missouri. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'd just like to comment that we have here in Missouri a 10-cent deposit on reusable beverage bottles. And I understand that Dow Chemical is going to start collecting, recycling plastic containers, and that there has come up, there's been a study that shows that they can break glass and tumble it in a tumbler and use it in making roadways, and the highways will last 10 times as long.
Okay, what do you hear about that, Mr. Porter?
Well, all those are good ideas. We only recycle 1% of our plastic now. There's absolutely no reason we couldn't recycle a lot more plastic and make it into useful products, and that's beginning again to happen. Glass is eminently recyclable, either to make into new bottles or in the application the gentleman mentions. So those are all things we're working on in the laboratories. I think economics are driving that way, and I think regulations are driving them that way.
If the idea of recycling is a good one, and I think we all agree that it is, why don't we raise the price from a nickel or a dime to 50 cents so we really make sure that every bottle gets returned?
Well, the problem with all of that, I mean, I'm not against that necessarily, but you've got to get that through legislators, and there's a lot of trade-offs in legislators about jobs and markets and whatever. One thing about these bottle bills, it's a little bit tricky, is there's a question of who do you favor? It's the glass people versus the packaging people versus the paper people versus the plastics people. They're all very concerned about how you do things to impact their market. And I don't think that's a total answer just to raise the price. Because as I've said a couple of times, we're finding people are willing to return their bottles if the people in the towns will make it convenient to do that.
Mr. Marco, I don't want to forget about you. We don't have a lot of time left, but you're also trying to convert rice waste into electricity. Tell me about that.
Yes, we have a plant that is about to go into operation that will take a very large share of the Northern California rice hulls that are a byproduct of the process of milling rice. and it's very, it takes a lot of space in a landfill to get rid of the material. We have a plant that will grind up the rice waste, blow it into an incinerator, again, transfer that heat into steam, and power a generator.
The ultimate puffed rice. All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll be back on more with waste in this country. Please stay with us.